Rome's government. Main idea. Rome's republic was shaped by a struggle between wealthy landowners and regular citizens as it gradually expanded the right to vote. Early Romans were divided into two classes, patricians and plebeians. The patricians were wealthy landowners. These nobles made up Rome's ruling class. Most of Rome's people, however, were plebeians. This group included artisans, shopkeepers, and owners of small farms. Both patrician and plebeian men were Roman citizens. They had the right to vote and the responsibility to pay taxes and serve in the army. However, plebeians had less social status. Marriage between members of the two classes was forbidden. Plebeians also lacked an important political right. They could not hold public office. How did Rome's government work? Rome had a tripartite, or a three-part government. One group of people ran the government, another group of people made laws, and a third group acted as judges. It had checks and balances so that one group could not get too strong, but it did not separate powers like our government does today. In the Roman Republic, the top government officials were the consuls. Two consuls, both patricians, were chosen every year. They headed the army and ran the government. Because they served such short terms, there was little risk that they would abuse their power. The consuls also kept each other in line because each could veto or reject the other's decision. The word veto is Latin for I forbid. Rome had other important officials called praetors. Their main job was to interpret the law and act as judges in court. Various other officials performed specialized duties, keeping tax records, handling public festivals, and so forth. Rome's most important legislative or lawmaking body was the Senate. This was a select group of 300 patrician men who served for life. In the beginning, the Senate only gave advice to the consuls. Over time, the power of the Senate grew. By the 200s BC, it could also propose laws, hold debates, and approve building programs. Another legislative body was the Assembly of Centuries. It elected consuls and praetors and passed laws. Like the Senate, the Assembly of Centuries was under the control of the patricians. Plebeians against patricians. As you might expect, plebeians complained about having so little power in the Roman Republic. After all, they fought alongside patricians in the army, and their tax payments helped the Republic thrive. Eventually, the plebeians took action to bring about change. In 494 BC, many plebeians went on strike. They refused to serve in the army. They also left the city to set up a republic of their own. These moves frightened the patricians into agreeing to share power. In 471 BC, the plebeians were allowed to set up their own body of representatives called the Council of the Plebs. The assembly elected tribunes who brought plebeian concerns to the government's attention. The tribunes also won the right to veto government decisions. In 455 BC, plebeians and patricians were allowed to marry, and in the 300s BC, plebeians were allowed to become consuls. The most far-reaching political reform came in 287 BC. In that year, the Council of the Plebs finally gained the power to pass laws for all Romans. Now, all male citizens had equal political standing, at least in theory. In practice, a few wealthy patrician families still held most of the power, and women remained without a voice in government. The Roman Republic had become more representative, but it was far from a full-fledged democracy. Who was Cincinnatus? An unusual feature of the Roman Republic was the office of dictator. We define a dictator today as an oppressive ruler with complete control over the state. Roman dictators also had complete control, but they served the people and ruled on a temporary basis during emergencies. The Senate appointed a dictator in times of great danger. As soon as the danger was past, Roman dictators gave up their power. The best-known early Roman dictator is Cincinnatus. About 460 BC, a powerful enemy had surrounded a Roman army. Officials decided that the crisis called for a dictator, and that Cincinnatus was the man for the job. The officials found Cincinnatus plowing his fields. A loyal and devoted citizen, Cincinnatus left his farm and gathered an army. He defeated the enemy in short order and returned to Rome in triumph. Although he probably could have continued ruling, Cincinnatus did not want power. Having done his duty, he returned to his farm a mere 15 or 16 days later. Romans strongly believed in civic duty, or the idea that citizens have a responsibility to help their country. Cincinnatus was widely admired for his civic duty in his own time and in later ages. George Washington, for one, took inspiration from his example. Like Cincinnatus, Washington was a farmer when he was asked to head an army, the Continental Army, in the American War for Independence. After leading the Americans to victory, Washington returned to his plantation home. Only later, and with some reluctance, did he agree to become the first president of the United States. Should come back and look at that. Roman law. One of Rome's chief gifts to the world was its system of law. The legal system of the United States owes much to the Roman system. Rome's first code of laws was the 12 Tables, adopted about 451 BC. Before this time, Rome's laws were not written down. As a result, plebeians claimed that patrician judges often favored their own class. They demanded that the laws be put in writing for everyone to see. The patricians finally agreed. They had the laws carved on bronze tablets that were placed in Rome's marketplace, or the Forum. The 12 Tables became the basis for all future Roman laws. They established the principle that all free citizens had the right to be treated equally by the legal system. The 12 Tables, however, applied only to Roman citizens. As the Romans took over more lands, they realized that new rules were needed to solve legal disputes between citizens and non-citizens. They created a collection of laws called the Law of Nations. It stated principles of justice that applied to people everywhere. These standards of justice included ideas that we still accept today. A person was seen as innocent until proven guilty. People accused of crimes could defend themselves before a judge. A judge had to look at the evidence carefully before making a decision. The idea that the law should apply to everyone equally and that all people should be treated the same way by the legal system is called the rule of law. In the age of Rome, the rule of law was still a new idea. In many lands, people at the top of society often had special privileges and did not have to obey the same laws or use the same courts as people lower down. In some places, people at the bottom of society did not have any legal rights at all. The rule of law is one of the key ideas that the Romans gave to the world. It is still the basis of our legal system today. Reading check. Contrast. Before 471 BC, what right did patricians have that plebeians did not?